Sanjit de Silva is a Sri Lankan-born, New York-based actor, writer, director, producer, everything really, which we're going to be talking about as we go along with this conversation. He received his MFA in acting from New York University's prestigious Tisch School of Arts, and he has written, starred, and co-directed the short film Time After, which was an official selection of the Women and Minorities in Media Festival in 2015. He's co-written 4 plays with his wife, Deepa Purohit, and his TV pilot, Lankan, was recently developed at the Orchard Project Episodic Lab. His stage credits include on Broadway, Warhorse, and off-Broadway, An Ordinary Muslim, and Dry Powder. Dry Powder is the play in which Sanjit starred alongside John Krasinski, Hank Azaria, and Claire Danes, and for which Sanjit received the nomination for the Lucille Lortel and the Outer Critics Circle Award for Best Featured Actor. This was followed by a performance in Clifford Odets' Awake and Sing, produced by the Public Theatre and the National Asian Americans Theatre Company. Sanjit's film credits include After Party, The Girl is in Trouble, produced by Spike Lee, The Company Men, and 2007's critically acclaimed Arranged. And his TV credits include Blacklist, Homeland, New Amsterdam, Evil, Tell Me a Story, Why, The Last Man, which I'm really, really keen to find out more about, Sanjit. It's such a sort of classic. And also Blind Spot, Time After Time, Madam Secretary, and High Maintenance. Sanjit also founded Silver Dollar Films to create and produce stories about the American experience that aren't seen in the mainstream. And on his website, he writes, specifically, we strive to create stories about the people of color in America who aren't often as the main character or focus in most films and television. Sanjit also teaches at the New School College of Performing Arts in the MFA and BFA programs, and he also offers private study classes, scene study classes, that is. And you can find out more about his classes and his work at www.silverdollarfilms.com. And that's Silva spelled S-I-L-V-A. Sanjit, thank you so much for joining us.
Tracy, thanks for asking me.
No problem. How are you doing? What have you been up to?
We just talked about this.
Yes, but now you have to talk about it for the people who are with us.
How am I doing? You know, given the circumstances of a pandemic and a fraught political situation, not too bad. We're okay. We have our health. We're able to pay the bills. The 13-year-old son, he seems to be adjusting to online and playing Xbox more often, quite easily, quite well. Yeah. So given the situation, we're not doing too bad personally, but it's definitely a fraught time for artists in
it really is.
This country. Yeah. You know,
and you're right. We are kind of privileged in that we have our homes and we have our health and we have kind of safety net, which is not the case for everybody. I mean, we're talking specifically about artists, but in general, it's been a pretty chaotic and apocalyptic 4 months, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. And this week actually is quite apocalyptic because the extra unemployment assistance runs out this week and our Congress has not extended it, which means people who really relied on it, and I know a lot of artists who do, will not be getting that, and their rents are due next week. So it's going to be, and evictions are able to start next week as well. So we're going to have a flurry of people with less money and possibly no homes. So
yeah, I mean,
bleak.
That is something bleak. It is bleak. That is something I was going to ask about, actually, like what the government response was and how long it's been sustained. But, you know, we have the answer now. So that's it. It's finished.
Well, they're working on a plan right now. They're trying to come up with another extension of the plan. But as always, the Republicans want to give workers less and businesses more, and the Democrats are trying to give workers more and businesses less. And they have to find a way to meet in the middle, and they have to do it fast because, of course, they go on recess in 2 weeks.
Right, of course.
So how dare you try and even go on recess without coming up with a plan? So our hope is that their greater angels will prevail and that they will come up with a plan. But it won't be the same amount as before. But we don't know. We literally don't know. They are literally in the process of negotiating right now. And you know, we have 30 million people out of work right now. And you know, there's this talk of, you know, giving you money disincentivizes you from going to work, but if there's no work,
there's no work.
What are you going to do, right?
Yeah.
If you don't have any work, you're getting less unemployment, and then you might be you might get evicted. You know, you're gonna. So yeah, we're not in a great situation, and I think and I really hope that they come together to make a plan. I do feel lucky that in New York, at least, there's a real sense of our government, you know, being aware of the situation, and maybe the states can do something. But it's tough because states are in such a huge deficit.
Yeah.
Because of the pandemic. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely bleak, but I also feel like there's an energy in this country led by a lot of young people to make change. There's the protests in the street. I live in Brooklyn, and we have a lot of protests here, and they are, for the most part, actually very peaceful and very inspiring. And there seems to be a real desire and want to reimagine and reconstruct our structures, our institutions, so they work for everyone in this country, not just for a select few. And it finally feels like this is a moment where, if enough people gather together, we could actually make that happen, which is an inspiring thing to be a part of, you know.
And you said you've been joining the protests, and
and
that inspired you.
It did, you know, for a long time. I wasn't. I was staying in the house. We were in a lockdown, so I didn't go anywhere. I literally wouldn't leave the house. I was actually getting pretty tense and nervous about it. But when George Floyd happened, I think all of us felt like, boy, we can't stay in our houses anymore. We have to go raise our voices. And I have to say, the protests were beautiful and peaceful, and everybody was wearing masks. The cops weren't wearing masks, but we were all wearing masks. And there was a real sea of people who really were there to raise their voice, to say, we change needs to happen now, and we won't stop until change does happen. And it was really inspiring for me. But, you know, I mean, I joined the protest, but I also have a family. So I don't go every day, and I haven't been in a couple of weeks, but there are people out there putting their bodies and their lives on the line to make this a better country. And that is really, that's an inspiring thing to see. A lot of young people, you know, a lot of young people who just, and the mix of people, brown, black, white. I mean, it's an overwhelming sense of unity among these young people. And so that's been really inspiring, I have to say.
I mean, it was inspiring just to watch some of those videos and kind of keep up with what has been going on. But it has been seriously for you guys a very apocalyptic time. You've got not just the virus, but also the whole Black Lives Matter movement, and you've got elections coming up as well. So pretty crazy times.
Yeah. It's definitely I'm curious to see. I think some great art might come out of this. I think there might be some great theater, TV, and film that comes out of this moment. You know, our artists are the sort of recorders of history, right? So and they record it in a way that's emotional rather than just intellectual. So so I'm really curious to see how that happens and what comes out of this.
Yeah, I'm that's what everyone is saying, and I'm kind of hoping that too, that people are, you know, staying at home and writing or whatever. But on that note, we've spoken to 10 people now through this series, and we've spoken to people in Sri Lanka and in England and Ireland and in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
The country has suddenly just slipped my mind. Rwanda. There you
Rwanda.
go.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, a really inspirational practitioner there called Hope Azeda. And what everyone is saying, Sanjit, is that, theater is not theater unless it's live. And everyone's talking about the connection and the energy and the proximity and all that. And everyone is pretty much saying it has to be like that. It cannot be any other way. And if it isn't happening like that, then it's dead.
Mm-hmm.
And anything else that happens is not theater. And I was wondering, since we're talking about young people and hoping that, stuff is going to happen, I was wondering if there's anyone, because, New York is, again, one of those big, big hubs where, real cutting edge work is made. So are you aware of people who are going, well, actually, no, sod that. Theater can be something else, and I'm going to break the mold, and I'm going to, try and make it something else. I'm going to make a new kind of theater, as it were. I mean, are you hearing anything like that? Are people, doing something?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I personally was in some ways like, no, theater's dead. You can't do it on stage. It's over. Just shut it down. And then there were all these Zoom readings that were happening, just like a flurry of people on Zoom just doing readings. And I did one of them, and I was like, oh my God, I can't do this.
Yeah.
And I think there was in the beginning, because when we shut down, people just felt like panic, like we have to be creative. And so there was this rush to Zoom. And I think even I was like, come on, people, that's not theater. It's not a substitute. But then slowly, people started doing interesting things on Zoom.
Tell me.
And well, when I teach at the new school, and they were supposed to do productions of Richard III and an all-female Julius Caesar, and they decided, let's do it through Zoom as a live performance through this kind of what you're doing right here, through this whole open whole new technical things. There's open broadcast, and then you can do it live through Zoom and do open broadcast, and then you can put graphics, and then you can cut it, and then you can put little, create your montages and your backgrounds. And all of a sudden, people started playing with that technology, and most of it just was awful and it fell flat.
Yes.
The moments that worked, you were like, oh wow, that can work. And it felt theatrical. I could felt like there was a sense, because I think it was when they were doing it live, it really felt like really theatrical, using this new medium of Zoom. And also because Zoom is it's not polished. It's like your crappy little camera on your laptop, but then you're doing it live. And so then there's this sense of handmade that theater is an artisanal art form, right? It's handmade, it's live, it's right in front of you, anything can happen. And so I started to go, oh, there's some interesting things here happening on Zoom. And then Richard Nelson, who is a playwright who's done a lot of work at the Public Theater, and his whole thing has been doing plays, and there are mics all over the stage, so the actors don't project at all; they just talk. And then because the mics pick up everything, the audience can hear, and people can actually ask for headphones also. So he wrote this Zoom play for Zoom, because it was all about this family in upstate New York. And it was them gathering over Zoom in the middle of the pandemic. So he wrote it for the moment, for the time. And to be honest, I was like, I don't want to see that. That's the last thing I want to see right now. Yeah. But I watched it, and it was really beautiful. I mean, the actors are amazing. But it used the medium of Zoom. It used the time period we're in, and it felt theatrical and
immediate.
And then I was supposed to do Richard II, Shakespeare in the Park. I've done 3 Shakespeare in the Parks. The Public Theater has a theater in Central Park called the Delacorte Theater, and they do free Shakespeare in the Park every summer. And we were supposed to do Richard II, and that got canceled. And then, which is sad because it's the first time in 60 years that it's been canceled. And I thought, well, that's done. And then they decided to do a radio play version of it, teaming up with WNYC.org, which is a big radio station here.
Yeah.
And that actually ended up working out really well also. And we were able to sort of translate the theater into radio, and we shot it over, like, they sent us recorders and high-end mics, and then we would act over Zoom with each other live while it
Oh,
recorded.
wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then
That sounds fascinating.
it was, so we actually got a chance to really act with each other with these
Yeah.
recorders. And so, and it went so well that they might actually do it even when we go back. They might always have
Right.
radio versions of these plays.
Yeah.
So there's people really trying to innovate, you know. It goes to show you, like, art is a part of humanity. Like, we can't live without art. You know, if you stop us, somebody will create something. Somebody will make a poem.
Yeah.
Somebody will draw. Someone, you know, that's an innate part of how we survive. And so I've been finding some of these, ways of bringing theater really interesting. And I know the National did the live stream where they did it to an empty audience, and you do a play, and that seems to be really interesting.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, nothing can replace seeing a live body on stage in real time, and the heartbeats of an audience starts to line up with the heartbeats of the people on stage. Like, nothing
Yeah.
can ever replace that. But
Sure.
I feel like theater artists are bringing their sense of theater and the importance of it to this new medium, and I think it's valuable. I think it's worthy. Why not? And I think it's ironic that people are sitting at home and how much Netflix they're watching, the live streams, so much culture they're ingesting, and yet our governments refuse to fund the arts. You know,
Yes.
how still we're still seen as sort of
We're a
secondary,
non-essential service.
except we're essential for everybody right now staying home. So I think I hope that also changes people's ideas of what art is, and makes them realize how much, it's a part of our lives and how much it should be valued. So yeah, I've been seeing some really interesting happenings.
Yeah. But I think as far as theater goes, and this is something I've been sort of thinking about as a teacher and as a fellow teacher, there is that. And if anything, we do have to adapt. And yes, okay, it might not be theater as we know it and all that stuff. But I'm wondering now, especially with my students, like, how do you keep them going? Emerging artists who are emerging at this time and who are facing this. What do we tell them? Like, hey, bet on. This will blow over eventually or something. Have you had those conversations with your students?
Yeah. This is a really, really hard, existential, interesting question, especially when students pay money, to go. But I also teach on camera. So on camera, acting skills are more important than ever right now, because TV and film are going to come back before theater, and a lot of things are going to be happening through this Zoom medium. So I feel like I was able to, because we went to online classes in the spring, my classes became even more sort of important because of that. But I do know a lot of the teachers who taught scene study on the stage and stage movement and voice, and how do you do that? How do you possibly do that? How do you do that? And I think that and I don't know the answer to this, but that's a lot of questions teachers are asking ourselves. I do know the new school is going to move towards a more camera-centered, focused curriculum, this fall.
Yeah,
but
everyone's kind of scrambling to do that.
To do that. But I actually think, I think it's actually really good, because one of the hardest things to get young actors to do is to be themselves instead of playing an idea of a character. Right?
Okay.
They play an idea of what the character is instead of actually coming from themselves, bringing a sense of their own humanity. They always they'll forget their own humanity to jump to the character, and the camera forces you to not lie. The camera is very adept, and I think there's an opportunity for younger actors to get a chance to really to feel what it's like just to be in front of themselves, to be themselves when they don't have to hit the back of the stage. When you don't have to hit, the last person in the audience. What's it like to actually just be here, existing as yourself and the character? And so I think there's an opportunity.
Okay. And I mean, it's an opportunity to improve those skills, because I know people who are kind of raised in the theater tradition like me. I still, like I was telling you earlier, like I've only ever done one film because I had, for me, the camera sees everything and I find it petrifying. And it is sort of a whole different kind of challenge to be that real and that intimate in this kind of, in this medium. So
it is. But I find and this is more towards naturalistic theater, but I find the greatest performances on stage are the ones that are also feel so intimate, and I think it's because those actors have the ability to really be within themselves, and then they also have the craft of being able to hit the last person in a 1,000-seat house. That immediacy, I think some of the best performances I've watched are able to do that, and I think this is a chance for young theater students to kind of hone that side of the craft while we're waiting to get back on stage and figure out how to hit the back of the audience.
I mean, I feel that's one area, if I'm to be totally honest, where we're lacking. I mean, in Sri Lanka, as you know, there's no kind of, we don't have anything like Actors Equity or SAG, and the industry as a whole is informal, which leads to a lot of problems, especially when it comes to young actors and sort of, exploitation, basically. But also, there isn't enough opportunity for, like, say, someone with your experience to work with our actors and go, hey, okay, you can't do live theater anymore, but why don't we look at, screen acting and focus on that? But we don't always have the resources or the people to do that training. So we are in a very tight spot right now. And I'm thinking of all the college students. And again, there's no government assistance at all for our industry. So bleak times, really. And some of us are kind of sitting together wondering, well, how do we work around this? How do we sort of help sustain young people who are entering this profession? And that's a conversation that we're starting to have.
Well, I mean, if you want, I mean, we can work together, and I can do a Zoom workshop for people.
That'd be wonderful, and that's something I'd love to explore. Let's look at actually, before we get into a little bit more about your work. And this might seem an obvious question to you, but again, just sort of asking you from the point of view of coming from an industry that doesn't have any kind of formalization. What is the benefit of belonging to something like Actors Equity or SAG at a time like this?
It's huge. It's huge. It's huge, but it's also, everyone's kind of suffering. So the unions are suffering as well, because the unions are, they live off their dues, their members' dues. And so if your members aren't working right now, especially Actors Equity, because there's no theater in terms of SAG-AFTRA, there's still, it's SAG-AFTRA, the Screen Actors Guild, and the Actors TV and Radio that merged. There's still commercials that are being shot, voiceovers are being recorded. residuals that come in. So the SAG-AFTRA still has some money, but Actors Equity is in a really bad position, and they've had to make furloughs, and they're trying to figure out how to keep their members' health care. I mean, this is another thing. We don't have a nationalized health care program. This pandemic is really showing why there should be one, because if it's all tied to your employer, nobody no longer has a business, you no longer have health insurance, right? So now we have all these people who can't, who don't have health insurance. But unions, I think, are such an important part of our industry, and I'm a big union person, and I'll give you an example of why it's so important. Actors Equity a few years ago had a huge contract negotiation that was up, and wages hadn't increased in over 30 years, right?
Okay, wow.
In an off-Broadway, you can't make a living wage. If you work 52 weeks out of the year off-Broadway, you are still not making a living wage. And so a group of people formed called Fair Wage on Stage, who worked in conjunction with the union, and we did a whole campaign to get people on our sides, educate audiences to exactly what actors make, and how much they don't make. And with the backing of the union and the solidarity of the union, we got huge percentages of raises in our income, in our contracts, historical highs, which never would have happened without a solidarity of the union, without the union going to bat for us, and without the members, more importantly, the members taking control of their destinies and being engaged in the union to push them. And then a union is only as good as its members, right? So if you don't have members who are engaged, it's no good. So that's an example of what a union can do. Now, I will tell you that we got historic increases. There's still not enough. If you're in Broadway or bigger off-Broadway houses, you can survive. But if you're in other smaller off-Broadway houses, it's still tough. You have to supplement your income. So in many ways, there's a lot of actors in New York. There are so many people who have their day jobs and then do theater, because theater doesn't sort of pay you enough. So, in some ways, it seems like, here's the place where you can, kind of, do it. You just do off-Broadway theater, and that's all you have to do. But there's so many people with other day jobs, and it's very hard, and only 10% of the union works at any given time. That's just the reality of employment. But the thing with a union is we collectively bargain for health insurance. So Actors Equity has incredible health insurance when you qualify for it. Again, it's tied to work. So now nobody can work, nobody can qualify for health insurance. So catch-22. But but I think unions also secure. Unions got us 40-hour work weeks. Unions got us, lunch breaks. Unions get us. They protect us, on set, on stage, in rehearsal, and now especially the huge push towards sexual harassment and intimacy coordinators in rehearsal spaces. And so unions are really great tools to,
Intimacy coordinators.
Yeah, that's a big thing now. Intimacy coordinator is a job now, so that if you have scenes in a TV, film, or theater where the characters are having sexual relations, or they have to kiss, or intimacy coordinators come in to make sure that it's choreographed, that actors feel comfortable, that they're both on the same page, and to make sure that they're it's like a fight choreographer.
Okay.
So they're very similar to fight choreographer, but they then take all the onus off the actors and the director, where it's like, can you just the scene says kiss, so can you guys just make out? And it's like, are actors comfortable? Do they know how to do it? Like, will the other actor push the boundaries? But intimacy coordinators give you a set of rules and a way of working that allow you to make it feel like choreography. So that's becoming a standard now, and that's part of the unions are adopting it. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Gosh, that's so interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Intimacy coordinators.
Yes. Okay. We're going to turn away from that. And I want to talk a little bit about the work you're doing right now. So you're in Why, The Last Man, it's a TV adaptation of a sci-fi comic book series by Brian K. Vaughan and Pierre Guerra. And it's set in the time of a plague. Only this plague wipes out sort of the entire male population, pretty much, except for this guy Yorick. And the series is about his journey. And this is set to premiere sometime this year or next year, from what I've read. What can you tell us about it? What was that experience like? And what can you tell us about the series?
I don't know how much I can tell you.
Okay.
Did I sign an NDA? I think I did. What I can tell you, first of all, everything shut down. I was supposed to go do some reshoots earlier this year, and that all got shut down. So I don't actually know when it's going to premiere. I know FX has made the commitment to the series. The original showrunners are no longer on it. Which are the ones who cast me. So I also don't know how what's happening. But apparently the new showrunner is really great. But I can tell you when I got the job, or when I shot, it was one of the greatest experiences of my acting life, I have to say. It was an incredible group of people that came together to create that pilot. Diane Lane is in it. Marin Ireland is in it. Lashana Lynch is in it, who was in the new 007 movie. And it was one of the first times, I got cast in this. I play. How much do I say?
Yes, anyway, I was going to say, who are you?
I play the chief of staff to the President of the United States, Timothy Hutton. Plays the President of the United States, and it was it was an incredible experience. First of all, the showrunners and the writers were incredibly open and thoughtful, and they actually allowed me to contribute to my character. He's a sick American man, and I did a lot of research on Sikhism, and I brought a lot of my information to the creators in terms of like even costuming to lines to who he is, and they were so open and usually they're like, thank you for your information. Move along and just say your lines, okay? And they were really open and took all my information and relayed that to the costume department, and they got me the things that I want. It was one of the greatest, and we shot for about 3 weeks, and we shot all over New York, and I just spending weeks with like Diane Lane and Marin, and it was just it wasn't
so bad.
It was amazing. It was incredible, and the role was great, and I think it's so relevant to right now. But the fact is, Tracy, I don't know what's going to happen with it, because production got shut down. I don't know when it's starting up again. But I do know that if they eventually do it, it will be, incredibly relevant to right now. But yeah, it was one of those jobs that was a dream job, but I don't know if it'll ever see the light of day.
Well, fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. It'll happen. Fingers crossed. Yes. And okay, so talk to me about Lunken. What can you tell us about that? So, and you're the writer on it. Are you going to be?
Yeah, I co-wrote. Yes, I would also be in it. Yeah. So me and a friend of mine, Craig, went to college with. He's a playwright. He and I co-wrote the pilot together, and I have for the longest time have wanted to. I have two things I want to do. One, I wanted to really make a show about Sri Lankan Americans, and specifically my family. My father's Sinhalese, my mother's Tamil, and that's why we left the country when the '83 riots happened. And they have always been to me a great example of Sri Lanka and the unity of Sri Lanka, and Sri Lanka that has this multi-ethnic, religious place that people can get along and can survive. And we made our way from Sri Lanka to America, and it was the immigrant story. I really haven't seen. It's funny. I've been an actor for almost 20 years. I realized like 4 years ago, I've never seen myself on screen.
Yeah.
I've never seen myself on screen. I've never seen my story. I've never seen it. And so I really wanted to create a show based on my family's journey to America. And that's what Lunken is. And so I've been working on it for a few years now. I'm at a stage where we developed this latest pilot. I pitched the show to networks last year, which was really interesting. They're like, Sri Lankan, huh? Who would play the Sri Lankan? I was like, do you know any other Sri Lankan actors other than me? They're like, you would play. Okay, interesting. So it's been a journey to try and get it done. And now, of course, everything's kind of stopped. So I'm thinking about turning it into a screenplay. And just shooting it myself. So that's, I think, what the next step is for Lunken. And the current version of it actually centers around the Easter bombing.
Oh.
Wow. And so it uses my family story, and then the Easter bombing kind of sends us to a different, to sort of explore.
I can see how that would work cinematically. I mean, just the fact of all these bombs going off simultaneously is just something, isn't it?
And I think that Easter bombing really affected all of us here. I mean, it was such a devastating thing, and I think here we all were taken back to the '83 riots. We were taken back to those moments again, and so I think that would be part of the screenplay, but turn into a film. So that's where I'm right now. Yeah, with it.
Okay. I was going to go back to something you said a little bit earlier, in that you'd never seen yourself on screen, and this is something that's just becoming a bigger and bigger conversation that people are having, and that is,
sorry, before I say that, except for when I saw Bernie White for the first time. I don't know if you know Bernie White. He's another Sri Lankan actor. He was in The Matrix. He was in the Captain Marvel movies. He played, when they're in the subway, the subways, down in the subway, he has a family. It looks like an Indian family, the little girl and the wife. Neo sees this family in the subway.
I can't remember.
What's his name? Is Rama? I can't remember the name, but
Bernie White.
Bernard White, who was actually supposed to.
Is he related to Duncan White? This is a real Sri Lankan thing we're doing here now. Bernie, is Bernie related to Duncan White, that famous athlete?
Oh, I don't know. That's a good question. I've never asked him.
Child. Yes.
Yeah, I'll ask my mother. But Bernie White is he's a hero of mine, and he's I didn't know about him till later, and we were actually supposed to do a stage play together a few years ago, but he had another job. He's on Silicon Valley. He played the guru in Silicon Valley. Anyway, he's a phenomenal actor. If you
look him up.
Look him up. And
maybe you can put me in touch. And
I can put you in touch with Bernie. He's a true artist, a wonderful a human, and a really good actor. So he's one of the first times. So, but again, he wasn't playing a Sri Lankan. He was, playing an Indian character in The Matrix, and so
yes. And you've actually, in all the work you've done, I mean, you haven't played a Sri Lankan either, but that is because
I have once.
You have?
The Girls in Trouble. The Girls in Trouble was co-written by Myron Tiruchelvam, who is a screenwriter and producer, and he wrote that role to be Sri Lankan, and I was cast in that role. Yeah, so that's the one and only time I've played a Sri Lankan character, and Myron is another great He's a film producer, screenwriter.
Well, Tiruchelvam, again, is another name with a lot of meaning and significance for us here, especially with Neelan Tiruchelvam, who's
Yes,
yeah.
that is the link.
Is that his uncle? You see, everybody, this is such a Sri Lankan thing.
We're a small island. We're all.
Yeah, yeah. But going back to the question I was going to ask you, so this thing of like not seeing people like ourselves on screen and in theater, that is because there aren't enough of us, as artists and people of color. If we want to see ourselves, then we have to write more, and it has to be really we have to tell our stories more in order to be seen and to be heard. And are you finding that people of color are writing more? Is there more work, whether it's film or theater? Are people writing more? Is there more output of original work and productions?
Absolutely. It's so funny because this past year would have been like a golden age of Asian American theater, and then it all got canceled because of the pandemic. Yeah, off-Broadway, there's a lot of plays by Asian American playwrights. There are a lot of writers. I mean, I've been writing ever since I finished graduate school. My wife, Deepa Purohit, founded a company called Rising Circle Theater Collective that was for and by artists of color. And we ran a development playwrights lab called Ink Tank, where we developed 3 to 4 playwrights every year of color. So I have been in that fight. I have been that advocate for almost all my time as an artist. I always encourage people to write, and I think that's a really important thing to do. And I think a lot of artists of color, just by the mere fact that we don't see our stories, are forced to kind of write. Like, what do you do? If someone's not writing for you, somebody has to do it. So I think there's a whole generation of slash artists that are artists of color, meaning actor slash writer, actor slash director, writer slash director, producer. And you know what? I never set out to be a slash person. I just didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
I didn't have a choice.
Yeah. No, in that way, we are very similar in that I'm a director, actor, producer, and somewhat writer, but that you do that things for necessity's sake.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. And it turned out that I also do actually enjoy directing and writing, and it hits all of the parts of my brain. So it's turned out to be something that I also enjoy, but I don't know. Part of me would, if I was just always getting, an actor, and I knew there were roles always there for me, that my story would be told, I would never, I probably wouldn't. It's like I was like, oh, this is what. I did a play. You said "Awake and Sing" with the National Asian American Theater Company, which was a seminal moment for me. It was in 2015, and I'd been doing plays forever, and it's the first time I realized I was in a room with all Asian American people, all Asian people, and I didn't have to explain myself. I no longer had the burden of having to explain myself. And I realized, oh my God, for 15 years, I've been in rooms where I subconsciously didn't even realize I was the only brown person or one of 3. And I always had to explain myself. And to finally be in a room where I didn't have to explain to anybody who I was and what my experience was sort of a profound moment for me. And it made me even more determined to create stories that enabled more people to have that feeling.
Yeah. And I mean, I was thinking of another article in which it was actually an interview that you gave in Slant magazine in 2016. And you're talking about dry powder. And you're saying, finally, I'm in a place where I'm doing the kind of work I want to do, and I'm being seen in the way that I want to be seen. And you were saying this in relation to the fact that you were cast to play a character named Jeff Schrader. And you were playing opposite Claire Danes, John Krasinski, and Hank Azaria.
Just a few unknown.
Just
nobody, struggling actors.
Yeah. But I mean, it has been a struggle for you, hasn't it? It's been a long and difficult road. Not least because, I mean, being in the profession is difficult enough as it is, but as a person of color, you have all these other sort of barriers to overcome as well. And what has kept you going? Like, what has kept you hopeful?
That's a good question.
Given you the strength to persevere.
How long do we have?
Yeah,
I think I
I
think the answer is probably a combination of things. One is the inexplicable thing. One, I honestly don't know. I almost feel like I didn't choose it; it chose me, and I don't know how to explain that to anybody. It kind of felt like I was trying not to be it, and then it just kind of something just stuck into me, and things happened where I got cast in a play, and then somebody saw, I said, you should do this, and then all of a sudden I did a Shakespeare lab, and then I went to grad. People say you should go to grad school, you'd be really great, and then you get slow people along the way tell you, I think you might be good at this thing, like you might be valuable doing this thing, and you go, really? I'm brown. I don't see anybody like me. How do I do this? But then people keep telling you can do it, and then inside it was a strange. I mean, I guess, do I believe in fate? I guess I sort of do kind of believe in fate a little bit, because it felt like things were pushing me in a direction, and some part of me didn't have control. And then people along the way would say, oh, yeah, you're good at this. You should do this. And then you start making a living, and you go, now I'm making money doing this. Like then it becomes your job. And then you go, wow, and then all of a sudden years pass and you go, oh, I have a career now.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and then at some point you realize, oh, now I really can't do anything else.
Yeah.
Because I've spent so much of my time doing this. I'm going to have to relearn something.
It's a bit hard to go back to that biology degree.
Yeah, it's too late to go back to the biology degree, and then you realize all of a sudden, 20 years later, you realize, wow, you've built a career, you've built a community, you've built you're known in the industry, you make a living doing it, and all of a sudden you realize that you have you're and I think that what it changes for me now is that, look, this is my job, and it's a job like any other job. I'm a middle class working actor. Like, that is what I do, with all the ups and downs that come with it. And even when the industry shuts its doors, I feel like I've earned the right to still be here. I've earned the right to ask doors to be open.
Absolutely.
And whenever there have always been moments around. I think every artist has this, no matter who you are. I think every 3 to 5 years, you should ask yourself why you're doing this. Actually, I think everybody should. Everybody should assess every couple of years why you're doing what you're doing, because it will inform you, and it's informed me about whether the path is still the right path for me, or whether there should be something else I should be doing. And so far, every time I've come to that little moment where I go, okay, all right, what are you going to do? You're going to keep still doing this? Is this where you are? The answers have come back, yes, so far. And I think now, in my 40s, I'm finally at a point where I feel like I've arrived. And I think that's what I was talking about at the Slate article. I felt like I've arrived at I've arrived at the place where I don't question now that this is what I do. That this is who I am, and for good or for worse,
I am, and this is legit. Yeah,
this is legit. I am an artist. I am an actor, writer. Like, this is what I do, and this is what I will continue to do until I no longer exist. And I will take on all the challenges and obstacles that come with it now, without having misgivings about that fact.
Yeah.
I think that took me a long time because it's true, as an actor of color, an immigrant, you're like, do I deserve this? Should I be doing this? Is this, the doors don't seem as open, you know? And then a mix of all these things have to get you to a point where you can finally stand in that place and go, yep, this is who I am. I'm not going anywhere. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So this is a line from Hamad Chowdhury's play, An Ordinary Muslim. And your character Azim says, I don't have a history. I don't have a heritage. And I'm sort of looking at you, Sanjit. I mean, your family left Sri Lanka when you were 7 years old, and then you went to Uganda and to Kenya, and after that you arrived in America. Have you ever felt that sentiment? Have you ever felt like you don't have a history or you don't have a heritage? Or is that something you had to really find?
That play was one of the most personal things I've ever done in my life. At the end of that play, Hamad wrote, he breaks down in his father's arms. And I never had a problem not doing that. 8 shows a week.
Okay.
Because I understood the pain of immigrating and not knowing where you belong, right? He's saying he doesn't know where he belongs. And that's exactly the struggle that I have been through. And I think I still, there's still part of it that I still feel, I still struggle for that. But it took so long to find out, whether I belong and where I belong. And yeah, so I've never given myself into a role like I have in that role. It took everything out of me to the point where I didn't do anything stage work. I haven't done any stage work since then.
Okay, that was 2018.
Yeah, Shakespeare in the Park was going to be my first return. Was going to be my return to the stage.
But from all the reviews, it seems like an incredibly difficult role to have played, because he's just so full of rage and he has all these tirades, really, is the way one reviewer described that. So I can imagine that it was a very sort of exhausting experience.
It was one of the most thrilling, amazing, and exhausting experiences. But I have to say, I think my mother might be listening to this, but it was all worth it when my parents came to see the show, and at the end of at the curtain call, I bowed and I saw them in the audience, and they saw their story reflected on stage. And that I got to be a part of that, I said once, in America, almost having brown bodies on stage in itself is a political act. And to have that show where so many people, I can't tell you how many brown people at the show said, thank you, I finally saw myself. I finally saw myself on stage. The power of that will always, always stay with me. So for all the psychic hardship of that show, boy, this is why we do what we do, to be able to go after a show backstage and see a young man who had never been to the theater say, my uncle from Pakistan saw some article and told me I should go see this show. So I came to see it. I've never been to the theater. And you moved me. I saw myself. Like, you're like, thank you. And then, it affirms why we do what we do. So that show was hard, but it also gave me some of the most incredible moments, validation for what it means to be an artist.
Okay, thank you. This is my final question. Now, you were in the sort of debut American production of War Horse. And amongst other roles, you played the front leg of the horse.
No, I didn't. No, I didn't do any. I didn't. Oh no, I didn't do any.
No? You weren't the front leg.
I didn't do any of the main horses. No, I was there was the horses and the humans. I was one of the humans, but I did do some puppetry for like some of the horses that got killed in the war. But no, I didn't do the actual
in the puppets.
Those people. No, I rode the puppets. I played Captain Stewart and Major Nichols. So I rode some of the horses. And I did some puppetry, but boy, I didn't play the main horses.
Tell me how you rode the horse.
So I in the first year I played a few characters, German character and a Welsh character named Taff, who actually frees the main horse Joey at the end of the show, and it was an incredible moment. Like the platform rises up with just me and the horse, and I have this moment, where I'm saving this horse on Broadway with like 1,600 people, and you're like, I'm living the dream. And that show was a phenomenal show to be a part of, and also physically exhausting. But I understudied Major Nichols and Captain Stewart.
Yes.
So, and then the second year I took over from Major Nichols. And so I got a chance to actually ride the horses, which was incredible.
What was it like? So how did you get on the puppet?
Yeah, it's crazy because you're like, there's two people, there's a person in the front and the back, and they are underneath this horse, and you have to get on. There was a weight. You had to be a certain weight in order to play one of those roles, also, because you couldn't.
Sure.
But literally, it was the size of a real horse. So you would do it exactly like if you're a real commander, you have somebody who actually helps you with their hand. You put your foot on it. 1, 2, 3, hop, and they help you go up, and you go over the horse, and then you're balanced on this thing, and you got to try. It was a phenomenal experience. And then Major Nichols, he gets killed.
Yeah.
Oh no, I might have just ruined this for people. It's fine. But there's an incredible moment in the play where he's riding this horse, a bullet comes at him, this big puppet bullet, and then when he dies, they had the experience of like he gets up and it's as if like he's killed and he gets slowly moved back. And it's like he's on strings, but it's actually me balancing on two people holding, and they're all moving back while I just stand there screaming. It was a phenomenal. It was an incredible piece of theater craftsmanship, and I got a chance to be a part of that play. The theatricality, the puppetry, the staging, it was really sort of an incredible experience as a theater artist to get to be. It's everything you ever learn in the theater, everything you could possibly do. And I got a chance to do two very different roles. I was there. I was there for 2 years, and so it was a incredible but very exhausting experience. I believe some of the horses are probably hurt to this day.
Yeah, I was. You share War Horse with another Sri Lankan actor.
Tusita, right?
Yeah, and so she was in the original production at the National.
Yeah.
And so I read this article saying that you had sort of been like the front leg of the horse or something. And she was talking about the
I puppeteered. You're right. I puppeteered the front leg.
Front leg. Okay. That's how you started out in the show.
No, I puppeteered the front leg for that's true. Doing one of the war sequences. Oh my! But I played so many. You played so many roles. That play, though, you were cast, and then everybody understudied as well. So that was usually there's separate understudies. That was really that was grueling. But that's incredible that Tusita did it too.
I know, and she was recalling it because clearly I got it wrong what you did, but she was saying, especially the end. For the horses was not for the faint-hearted, and she says she remembers that the physio on their production was just busy all the time because it was just so grueling.
It was grueling, yeah. I had a pretty bad injury from it too. I was out for a couple of weeks, and but we had physio. We were in physio and massage every week. It was it was I mean, people who don't think Broadway performers, they're like athletes. It is an athletic competition. It's even more. Studies have been done. The same level of adrenaline runs through a performer about to go on stage as an NFL player about to go play in the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Right?
I can understand that. Yeah. Okay, we're going to take some questions now, Sanjit.
Okay.
Here we go. It's the first question from Samantha D.S. Vijayaratna. So, hi, Tracy and Sanjit. I listened as a kid to a few radio plays regularly. Do you think this will ever make a comeback in these times, or have film and TV taken over completely?
Yeah, there's we have a Williamstown Theater Festival in Massachusetts. They do a summer theater festival. They've turned their whole season into radio plays. So they're going to have 5-6 radio plays that'll come out. This Richard II was so successful, they're thinking about doing more Shakespeare radio plays. Audible has their own theater, theater company, that what they do is they'll perform and then they'll turn it into a radio play and release it on Audible. So yeah, I mean, it was already actually starting to be a thing, this radio play. And I think actually, yeah, there'll be many more radio plays. Look, TV and film are obviously, you can't, they'll always be the front runners, but radio plays it's going to be interesting. In this next couple of years, you're going to see a lot of radio plays.
Okay, thank you. Here's the next one from Deshant Tennakun. Are theater crews coping okay? I know actors and directors are suffering. Are crews getting non-theater work? How are they adapting?
Yeah, you know what? This is such a good question because, people think like, oh, theater's not working, just the actors, but the hundreds of people that work behind the scenes, stage managers, assistant stage managers, wardrobe stylists, props people who make the scenics, the crew people. All of them are unemployed, and all of them are working class, middle class workers. They don't have huge savings. They work from gig to gig. And that's another reason why we're fighting so hard to extend this unemployment insurance, because those people are the heart and soul of theater, and a lot of them are out of work. I think, IATSE, which is the union for the Broadway crew, is really strong. It's one of the strongest unions. So I think they're pushing hard for this unemployment assistance. So yeah, there's a lot of people struggling out there. Now I think a lot of them have technical skills, so maybe they can sort of translate. But these people have given their lives 20, 30, 40 years to this profession.
I think that's the thing, that a lot of people, sometimes if you're a layman in terms of theater, you don't kind of understand that what you see on stage is just the tip of the iceberg. And behind that and behind that and behind that are just these huge people who are even more vulnerable than we are. Okay, thank you for that. Here's another question. Pumi Vijayasundara. Hi, Tracy and Sanjit. Thank you for this insightful discussion. As a theater maker of color, do you find yourself pigeonholed or expected to create certain kinds of stories or play certain roles? Has this been empowering or limiting? What advice would you have for migrant theater makers navigating this identity when creating theater?
Wow, that's a good question. Yeah, I think because after I went to grad school, I came out, I did a lot of classical work, so I got a chance to play other characters. But when I got into TV and film, you were very much pigeonholed. If you look at my early reels, you're like, same guy with an accent, same guy with a different shirt, same. I was always playing the. When I first came out of grad school, they said, "Oh, you're the hot EA guy." I was like, "EA? Yeah, ethnically ambiguous. You're gonna be you're gonna be our ethnically ambiguous actor." And I was like, "Wow, okay." And I think there were a lot of taxi drivers, a lot of terrorists, their roles. But I made a choice early on. I said, I'm not auditioning for any terrorist roles. I'm not going to go out for any of those roles. I'm not going to go out for any roles that I think are stereotypical, that I think makes that character, that person's culture, look worse or stereotypical. So I made that decision early on, and then my agent said, "Well, what if they're really complex?" I was like, "Bring it! I've yet to see a very complex terrorist role yet cross my desk." So I felt like I didn't want to be pigeonholed. I didn't want to be. I didn't want people. I didn't want to do roles that were stereotypical, and I made that early on. I think that's really important for young actors because you feel like you can't say no because you're nobody, right? You just should go get a job. You just need to work. You're lucky to work, but actually, the sooner you embrace the power of no, the more powerful you are as an artist and an actor, because then you know your limits and you can set your career on your terms, even though there's so many things that you can't control. But it was really important for me to make that decision. And every role I play, I get cast as, I do look at it and I go, is this serving the role? Am I making it worse for, but I have gotten cast as especially in TV and film, as like the biracial, the ethnically ambiguous, the like Neil Brennan. His name is Neil Brennan, but he could be like biracial Neil Brennan, so Jeff Schrader. So I have had this strange thing where I've been able to say no, and then I've been cast in these ethnically ambiguous roles. But the theater really has had the most imagination. Theater is where I play the roles,
I was just going to interrupt and say I really like that. What was it? Hot EA guy.
EA guy. You're the hot EA guy.
I mean, talk about pigeonholed.
Yeah, that was my pigeonhole, I guess. You're right. That was my exact pigeonhole. Hey, listen, but that pigeonhole gave me a career.
I mean, be the pigeon, right? I think we should stop all pigeon references while it's safe to do that. Yeah. Right. Sanjit, thank you so much for joining us. And I am going to take you up on your offer to talk to us a little bit later about maybe doing some online acting classes for us. That would be really useful in terms of helping our young actors kind of transition to another medium, because we don't have enough training in film and television, really. So a couple of things before you go. Do you have a reading that you'd like to share with us?
Oh, yeah, I saw it's so funny because it's been really hard to read books for me this past year. I think I've been I've been watching the news so much and, or just watching TV and film. But recently John Lewis died. And I don't know if you know, John Lewis is a congressman, an African-American congressman here. And he was Martin Luther King's right-hand man during the movement. He was one of those young 23-year-old protesters, nonviolent protesters. He was really pivotal in the movement to get the Voting Rights Act, to get people of color their Black people their rights. He was a towering figure in America, and a man who fought all his life for equality and justice. And he died last week. And I've been thinking about him a lot. And I found a couple of his quotes that I find really inspiring. So I thought I'd read to you a couple of his quotes from John Lewis. This one is one of his most famous quotes. He said, "Do not get lost in a sea of despair. Be hopeful, be optimistic. Our struggle is not the struggle of a day, a week, a month, or a year. It is the struggle of a lifetime. Never, ever be afraid to make some noise and get in good trouble, necessary trouble." He was known for that, getting good trouble. And this is another quote that I love. It's from a memoir he wrote called "Across That Bridge, A Vision for Change in the Future of America." He said, "Freedom is not a state. It is an act. It is not some enchanted garden perched high on a distant plateau where we can finally sit down and rest. Freedom is the continuous action we all must take, and each generation must do its part to create an even more fair, more just society. So those are the two of the quotes that
I mean,
sort
that
of
second one particularly kind of brings us back to the start of our conversation when you were talking about young people and that this being a time of real sea change. So more power to all of them, and hopefully it will happen.
Yeah, and I love the fact that he says, it's not freedom isn't a place you reach. It's not some static place. Every generation has to define and fight for freedom.
Yeah.
And I think that actually makes me feel better. It means that we're in a continuum, right? And we each have to keep working towards that, and then you don't get complacent. You don't think, oh, we've arrived, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I like about that.
Okay. And so you haven't been reading much?
Not books, no. Oh, except I am reading not fiction books. I'm reading How to Be an Anti-Racist right now by Ibram X. Kendi.
Okay. How's that going? Slowly,
yeah. Ibram X. Kendi is an incredible writer. He's an African-American writer. He wrote this book called Stamped from Birth, which really explored how racism and anti-Blackness was perpetuated and white supremacy was started in order to justify the slave trade. It's an incredible. It's a thick book. It's a very book that goes from the 13th century to now. And then he just wrote How to Be an Anti-Racist a couple of years ago, and that just came out. It's like the #1 bestseller in America right now.
At the moment, yes, I can understand why.
White Fragility and How to Be an Anti-Racist, the two of the best-selling books in America right now. And How to Be an Anti-Racist it's an interesting book. I've been reading it now. But his theory is that you can't. It's not racist and non-racist. You're either racist or anti-racist, because non-racist means you can just say, well, I'm not racist, and then you can excuse yourself, which in fact means you're actually still helping racist systems and structures. So you have to be either racist or you're anti-racist, which I think is a very smart way of activating people. Because if you then say you're anti-racist, it means then you're actually saying you're willing to do things to actively dismantle institutions of racism, right? So I find that framing really smart and engaging. So I've been reading him.
I mean, that's suddenly making me think of all the, at the moment, there's a lot of anti-Muslim sentiment here. Mm. And there's people saying, I'm not a racist, but this thing of saying I'm anti-racist, it's just, they're just saying, well, I don't condone that or subscribe to that, but then also not doing or saying anything about it, right? And so then you become complicit, don't you, in sustaining these really harmful attitudes.
I think that's exactly right. And I think that was what was powerful to me too, because I think, oh, wait a minute, I don't think of myself, I'm not a racist. But then I thought, oh, wait a minute, am I an anti-racist? Am I doing enough? Am I being complacent? And even me, who's been an activist, and who's really pretty involved, I saw the places where I was also complacent. And and I think it activates you, because then it makes you ask yourself the question, am I complicit? And if most of us ask ourselves the question, we'll find that we are complicit.
Yeah. So I think once you find out that you're complicit, maybe that's when you make some good trouble.
Yeah,
I
think so.
On that note, Sanjit, thank you so much for joining us. And we will catch up with you soon. And in the meantime, take care and stay safe.
Thank you. You too. Stay safe. And let's talk. I'd be more than happy to do a Zoom session.
All right. Okay. Bye-bye.